So here, so this is a third-party add-on. It's it's one of those third-party add-ons that's almost part of React, and this is pretty good. This is pretty good documentation. So if you want to check that out, but we're going to I've created an app, and we're going to install React Router DOM. So as you get into React more and you start working on your projects, just be aware that there's a large third-party ecosystem. So if there's something that you're trying to do, just take a look at what's available from third parties before you start trying to do something yourself, unless you want to do something yourself. So I'm going to install this. And this kind of, we'll see what it looks like. Let's see. Oops. Into the wrong place. Yeah, so basically it will make your app look a lot more complicated because everything will show up in the app. You handle all your routes and stuff all in your app. So it's like putting your URLs and your views and your templates all in one file. Okay. So I'm going to start this running. All right, there we go. So we have our basic route. I'm going to get rid of some of this stuff. And I'm actually going to use class-based components today. So probably, so the exercise kind of starts with class-based components and you switch to functional. But when I guess starting today-ish, I'll probably just start using functional components as a default. So we've got our app, and let's say we want to make a blog site. So we want to have a navbar kind of thing. I'm not really going to make it look good, but we'll have links to like an about page and then a blog page. So we'll just do 2 links. So let's make those 2 components. And then we'll do home. All right, so I'll take care of a couple of these first. So I'm going to use some shortcuts. So this is stateless function component. So this is kind of, so if I type this in, I get all the defaults, and then this is the shortcut. So I get the name of the function and the export. And then I'm just going to return. And I'll do the same thing here. And the blog page. All right, so I've got my 3 components. Now I'm gonna import them into the app.js. And then okay, so at this point, usually we would maybe throw in blog, home, or about in here, and then maybe a nav component. So we make another component that was a nav component and put those three in there. You know, there's lots of variations. But what we're going to do now is we're going to wrap everything. We're going to wrap everything that we do in this application in a component called a router that we're going to import from React Router DOM. So we're going to import a bunch of stuff from React Router DOM. But first will be import browser router. So there are a number of different kinds of routers. So React Router will work with React Native, so not in a browser using a phone or something like that. But there's this browser router is the one that you're going to want to use. So the way this works is you will wrap, basically you wrap your entire application. So we could put that here in the app. We could also potentially put that, wrap that around here, import it here, and then use it there. We'll just do it in the app.js.
You're missing an S in the browser router.
Oh, thank you. There we go.
You switched the S and the W.
Yeah.
You copied it from the wrong place and pasted it over the right place.
All right, there we go. Okay.
Now you're missing the R. I'm just
Oh
kidding.
my.
I'm kidding. Sorry.
Probably. I mean, browser router is not defined. Okay, yeah, that's what should be happening. Okay, so if we take a look in the components here as we're doing this, it's going to get very messy because browser React Router is doing a lot of stuff under the hood. So we're going to end up, it's going to end up creating all these other components that are, so you don't really need to worry about it exactly, but this router.provider, so you have providers and consumers. So we'll see this kind of thing again when we look at the context API. And if you want to look into Redux, you'll see things like that as well. But we don't need to worry about that right now. So we have our browser router, and then so we're going to have a browser router, which is going to wrap everything, which is going to allow us. It's just the starting assumption for everything. So we're going to have a router, and then we're going to have links. So a link will just be an A tag, but it's a specific component that we're going to import from React Router DOM. So I'm going to import link. And then here, we're going to create some links. And we'll create links. So this is getting displayed on our homepage. I'm not going to do CSS, but this would be like a nav bar where you have our three components here that are just links. So this will be, what do we have? We'll have home. And then blog, and about. Okay, so we have these links. I don't think these links are going to do anything. Yeah, so what we need to do is give link, basically, where is it going to link to? So we pass it in a parameter called to, and this is going to be the URL that we want to go to. So nothing too complicated there. So for home, let's just say home, or we could just make it a slash. And then the blog will be to. And so we have our 3 links, which we can see will actually go there, but it doesn't do anything. It doesn't do anything yet. But these links work, and they actually will change our what's in our URL. So we have these links. We have our router, which is the outer component. And then we have links, which are just normal, basically they're just A tags. Let's take a look at that. So these end up being just A tags. We're getting this component from React Router DOM. And then here below, so we have what we want to display on this page right here. And then below we'll have what is effectively like our URL patterns. If this were Django, this would be the URL patterns. So it's just going to be, it's like a switch statement, which we don't really use too often, but so you can just think it's just going to start at the first one. It's going to go down and see if there's a match. So it's going to go down and see if there's a match to a given URL. So we'll import, actually I'll need to import that. Switch. So this is where the real routing, we're defining our routes. So we have this switch component here. And then this switch component will take a bunch of routes. So we have our switch component, it's ready to go. We have to give it a bunch of different routes. So, and we tell it what those routes are. So let's create some routes here. We'll have to import that. So this ends up being a little bit confused, you know. It's not the prettiest, but okay. So we have a route, and we can, and this route will then render whatever component we want. So let's say we want our first one to be home. So route will render home. So finally we get to what we actually want to see on the page. But the route, we have this route component. We need to tell it what that route actually is. So we pass it a prop called path. And in this case, that will be just a slash. Or actually, I'll do. Oh, yeah, that's fine. So we'll see that the order matters, and there's some other things you can do. But for now, we'll do this. So if I go with the slash, then I will see the home component. And I can, if you'll notice, it's matching anything that has at least this. So it starts looking here, and if there's a match, then it will take it. So even though we have other stuff off of here, so we can modify that behavior by specifying exact. Oops. we go to exactly / we get home page. Then we don't get anything. Okay, so we have a switch statement. We have one route. Let's get another route. And this route is going to render, let's say, the blog page. And we'll specify path equals. All right, so if we check this out now, we go to /blog, we can see our blog page. We go back to home, we can see the home page. All right, so let's add the third route here. And this third route will render the about component. All right, so now all three of these routes are working. So we have about, we have blog, and we have home. So that's the basics. We have to wrap basically our whole application in this browser router component. This is optional. This is just to get like the navbar feel. And then what we're actually doing, we're creating our routes here with using this switch component. We feed the switch component route components, and each route component will take whatever is going to end up being rendered. Okay, so we have all these components, but let's say we want to have a detail view of a blog. We can do that. I'm going to copy this. You can add a. So we'll take this. So we want to go to blog, and then /:, just very similar to Django. Use a colon, and then we'll give a variable. So in this case, we'll use user ID or blog ID or something like that. So post ID. And we don't want we don't want to go to blog. Maybe I should change blog to like something like that. So this is the blog page. It's all the posts, maybe the list view or some kind of other introductory page. And then we want a detailed view for each blog. So I'm going to create a new component. Will be blog detail. Create a functional component, and for now, okay. So if I go to blog right now, I'm going to get the page with all posts, and I go to /34. I still get blog page with all posts. So there's an issue with the routing where it finds this one and it's a match, so it stops there. It doesn't keep looking. So you can fix that. You can either change the order, or you can add other. So there's exact, and there's a couple other things you can pass. You make it case sensitive if you want. Oops.
I think it's because it's still rendering the blog component, not the blog detail component.
Oh, geez, thank you. Yeah, we should. I don't think we have to do exact here. Okay. So now we have the ability to get this detail view. So blog or blog with post ID. So if we go into blog, let's say we want to actually get that ID. If this were Django, we would do, request dot, what was it? Request dot get or something, and then do a, it's like a dictionary, and so you just get the whatever parameter or whatever you're passing in, or you get the ID as a parameter in the view function. But here we're going to have to use a hook. So React has its own hooks. You can make your own hooks, and other third-party libraries also use hooks. So we're going to import something called use params. So hooks are typically called use and then whatever. So import use params from React router DOM. So we have use params now. So what we can do is we call this post ID. Was I doing that in the wrong place? Yes. Post, we'll use destructuring syntax. Post ID equals use params. And then we can just try console logging post ID. So you can see 34 shows up there. And I get 45. So if we want to know, the detail of the post ID, however we're doing it, we could use a slug. It could be anything. So we just give this a name, and then we can grab that using the use params hook. So let's say that we want our blog detail to actually show a blog post that we get from our backend, our backend, or maybe even a third-party thing. So I'm going to go to let's see, JSON placeholder, and posts. We'll get a post. So how could I come here in my React app, go to blog post 45, the post with an ID of 45, and then hit my API, get post 45, and then display the actual contents on this page. So the first question would be something like, when is this a typical time to make a request to a backend?
When it's mounted, or the use
Yeah.
effect or function?
Yeah. So since we're doing functional components, we'll do use effect. So we'll import that. Import use effect. And how does use effect work?
It's an async function. You make an arrow function use effect and then create an async function inside of it?
Yeah, so if we want, so use effect by itself isn't async, but we can call an async function in there. So in this case, since we're fetching from an API, it will be async, but you don't have to do async stuff here. So this takes a callback, and then in here, if we want this to be async, we're gonna have to write an async function in the body of this callback function and then call it. So I'm going to call this get blog post. And this is going to be an async function. So I'm going to follow the standard pattern that we do here. So const request, or sorry, response equals await fetch, and then posts, and we want posts whatever the specific post is. So I'm going to do template string here. Okay, and this will be post slash, and then post ID. All right, so we'll make this, let me expand this out. All right, and then we'll have to parse the body. So const response body equals. And once we have that, we'll get let's just say we want the body from here. So we'll do sorry for that body. Okay. So at this point, we should have a body. Let's console log it. So I'm also going to add, I only want this to run when it mounts. So I'll just leave that like this. We go to blog. I don't have a link set up here, but let's go to blog/4.
I think we need to put post body into the console log.
Oh, thank you. Log +4. I don't think we have to do this, but post ID. Console logging 4. And I'm, of course, not actually calling this function. So get blog post. Okay, so what is wrong here? So I've done several things wrong. What is the most recent thing that I've done wrong?
I think you need to put await
Yeah.
or in the more places.
Yes. So console.log is undefined. So why is this undefined?
It's
Has it never got the response back in response JSON yet?
yeah, it's
Yeah.
a promise.
Yeah. So this is running before everything else, basically. So this should fix that. So now we can see our blog post here in the console. So now that we have our blog post, how are we going to get it displayed on the page?
In return, do a p tag with, or not, yeah, p tag and get post body in there. I mean, you could do whatever you want. So
So can you say that again? So do a return statement.
in return,
Okay, right. So in return.
yeah, yeah, do like some tag and like p and
Okay.
post body.
Okay. Is post body going to be available to me? I mean, first off, let me do a div here.
It's like deconstructed up at the post ID.
Yeah. So where does post body live?
In use effect.
Yeah. So this variable is out of scope right here. So post body only exists in this inner scope here.
Would you want to assign that to state?
Yeah. Yeah. So if we're going to make a call, we're going to get new information, right? The page is loaded, we get some new information, and that's a change, right? So something in our application is going to change. So if something changes, we want to put that in state. So let's const. So this is, we're using hooks here. This will be, we'll call it post contents, just to make that clear. Post contents, and then set post contents. And we'll have to import use state. Okay. And once we have that, we can put this in here. And if we try to refresh this, you see our loading message, and we've actually made the API request, but we haven't updated our state. So we'll update our state here once we get the new information that we want. We will do set post contents, and we'll set that with the post body, which is our new information. And this now works. So when the page first loads, well, first off, we're using a hook to get the post ID. So React Router is handling that for us. We have that available to us immediately. Then use effect with, this could be empty as well, since we're not going to be updating that value. We call use effect. We only run it on the initial mount. Use effect, we're going to call this async function to fetch data from a third-party API. When we get that data back, the specific subset of the information that we want, we can change our state. So changing our state triggers a re-render. Use effect does not run because of our dependency array. So use effect doesn't run, but we have updated state, which means that this is going to return something different. So now we can try going to post 5, and we get a new, and post 6, we get something else. We go back home, we go to our blog, Go to the about page, blog/55. So that's basically it. I mean, that's the basics of router. This looks very ugly, but that's how you do it. So we're basically including, you know, if this were Django, we're including 3 different things here. We're including the templates, the view to a certain extent here, and the URL patterns, the routing. So in order to use React DOM, you create a browser router component, you wrap it around. You don't have to wrap it on your entire app, but everything that you want to use routing, which probably will be your entire app. And then you have a switch component, which contains a bunch of route components, and each route component will contain what you actually want to render when someone goes to that specific route. And then if you want to, you know, have detail, you can also do nested routing, which we're not going to talk about now, but you can do nested routing as well. Here's a detail view, and you can get information about the route and about. So this is just one hook that you can use. There are others, but use params will get you that basically ID if that's what you're using to look up information in your backend. And then everything else works the way we've seen previously.
Outside of the API request, when the client does the original request for the page,
Yeah.
all of the components come down, and it is all the routing happening within the browser, in the DOM, and the engine component in the browser. It's not actually saying, now go back to the server to get /blog. Is that already local in the client now?
So could you ask that one more time? So
Like
if I go to home,
Yeah.
I mean, technically, if you look at the components, technically everything is rendered. So all of this stuff. So we have a whole bunch of stuff here that's being rendered. We don't need to worry about this. Is just the internals of React DOM router. You know, our little component is way down here at the bottom of all this.
So if you click on like about,
Yeah.
is that actually making another request to the server, or is it actually just being handled locally in the browser because it's part of the?
Yeah, it's being handled locally. You can do, we don't do this, we don't talk about this, but you can do what's called server-side rendering. But that's not what we're doing here. So yeah, this is all happening locally. I made the initial request. So this is basically a single page app that kind of feels like a standard app with different routes, and I make a new request and I get a new HTML page and all that. But that's not actually what's happening.
Okay, is there like an upper limit where if you put too many components into a single page, like just the request and loading in the browser actually starts to get impacted?
That's a good question. If there is a limit, it's definitely higher than anything that we'll do. So if you can look at page for React. So if you I'll look at the dev tools for them. So these are, you know, they wrote this site in React, and they are, you know, masters of React because they're writing third-party stuff. And look at this. I mean, it's just like, I can't imagine. And this is all showing up, and it's not like this took 30 seconds to load or anything. So I would say you probably don't have to worry about it unless you have a very extreme use case. But what you do have to worry about is like unnecessary re-renders and things like that. There's also, I mean, like for more advanced things, I've never done this, but you can basically do like partially load. So you can kind of, instead of requesting all of the code for the entire React application all at once on that first request, you just request enough for what you need now. And then if you do something else, you can make another request for the rest of it. So you can kind of do it piecemeal like that. Okay, so the challenge for today is to continue on. So the challenge has you kind of start with class components and do functional, but if you prefer to do it, if you know, you're welcome to do it. So we've seen class components and functional components at this point, so you're free to, you know, take your path now. Although this challenge will kind of start off with class components. All right.
So do we have to do functional or it's optional?
It's optional. It really depends. I mean, if you plan on doing anything with React in the future, you'll need to know functional components. I mean, that's basically the new standard. We teach functional components now because basically there's legacy code, and functional components are new enough that it hasn't totally taken over yet. But yeah, I know it's confusing. So, and if you come back and take this course again in 2 years, you probably won't have to deal with class components.
Jed, would you mind